Good morning. Professor Sampadananda Mishra, today's speaker, and a very distinguished scholar, director of Sri Aurobindo Foundation of Indian Culture, which is a part of Aurobindo Society, Sri Aurobindo Society. Dr. Geetesh, my colleague and my co-principal investigator in the project, and other viewers and enthusiasts of Mahabharata tradition. I welcome you all for our webinar series on Mahabharata, which is related to the project Yoga Consciousness in Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, the ethical value of societal and political well-being. And this is supported and funded and sponsored by a scheme of Ministry of Human Resource Development, scheme called Scheme for Promotion of Academic and Research Collaboration. And this is the background with which we begin this series. And our team includes Professor Vishwa Adluri, a professor of philosophy from Hunters College, USA, and Dr. Joydeep Bagji, who is associated with Hindu University of America, Dr. Geetesh Nirban, who is hosting this event today, my colleague and my colleague from Kamala Nehru College, Department of Philosophy, and I'm the principal investigator from Indian side, Professor Balaganapati Devarkonda from Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, and we are supported by young scholars who are part of our team, Jayashree and Anmol and Meghna, Deepshika. So this is the team which is making efforts, whatever required efforts to make this webinar possible. There are, since I have mentioned the title of the project that we have began with, I would like to point out certain pointers of our project, which made us delve into certain areas which are of interest to all of us. The pointers are yoga consciousness in Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. Yoga consciousness is discussed at many places in many of the philosophical traditions as well as epic traditions. But we are specifically focusing on Bhagavad Gita, and how is yoga is understood in Bhagavad Gita is specifically our concern. Along with that, the other concern that we have in the project is ethical value of societal well-being. No, it is not that whatever tradition that we have has no relevance to the contemporary times. So we have to bring it to the contemporary society and see how an individual can understand his own societal well-being by looking at the tradition, looking at the textual tradition that we have, looking at the epic tradition that we have in India. And that is the second pointer. And the third pointer that we have is ethical values of political well-being. It is not enough if individual is happy, individual is taking care of his well-being. It is not enough if societal well-being is taken care of. It is required that political well-being must also be taken care of, so that the life in toto would become a holistic, complete, and equanimous kind of one. So that is how we have chosen these 3 pointers, and objectives that we had is to revisit the textual tradition, specifically Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, which is an integral part of Mahabharata, and reappropriating this textual tradition to the contemporary life. And the third important objective that we have is trying to explicate the universal philanthropic and humanitarian aspects of Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. These are the objectives with which we have began the project. And as a part of the project, just few weeks back, couple of weeks back, we have began this Mahabharata webinar series. And that's the platform on which we are now coming together to listen to Professor Sampadananda Mishra ji. We had 2 talks before on societal well-being and ethical well-being. Professor S.R. Bhatt, a former chairman of ICPR and former head of Department of Philosophy, University of Delhi, has illuminated us on what kind of societal well-being that Mahabharata tradition envisages. Then we had another wonderful talk, second talk by Professor Kavita Sharma, which took us into ethical dilemmas that various characters in Mahabharata have come across, which would help us to look at our own lives when we come across certain kinds of dilemmas and how do we come out of that. So that was the second lecture that we had. And the third one, we are coming back to yoga consciousness, because one of the very important pointers is yoga consciousness. Though we began with society and then ethics, now we are with yoga consciousness to understand how, how Mahabharata tradition explains us what yoga tradition is. Because one of the very primary and very important aspects of the project, one of the primary focused question of the project is, what is the right course of action for an individual? What is the right course of action that we should take up in our day-to-day lives? Okay, whether it is a ethical dilemma, or whether it is a societal dilemma, or whether it is individual dilemma, what is the right course of action that we should take it up? Okay, so this question is very much related to yoga, and that's what Professor Sampadananda Mishra ji is going to help us understand. Just to open up the discussion, or open up our perspective into what Professor Sampadananda Mishra ji is going to talk about. In Indian tradition, we do talk about yoga, and all of us, when we hear the word, we think that, yeah, we know about yoga. We don't, nobody need to tell us, right? But what is the kind of understanding that we have, and how do we widen the understanding that we have of yoga is very important. And that is where I'm very sure Professor Sampadananda Mishra is going to elaborate and help us in understanding, or better understanding, of the concept of yoga. In general, all of us assume that yoga is only a unity. No? Yoga is coming together and unity, oneness, a feeling of harmony. This is how we usually understand. And if you take it up in the contemporary context, where yoga has become a globalized product, right? In such kind of a situation, you would find yoga to be reduced to either asanas, physical postures, or simply to meditation, okay, without going into any of these steps that are enunciated in the tradition. And this is a kind of reductionistic understanding of yoga, which is to be expanded and widened. Okay, I'm not saying it is wrong. It is also one of the ways of understanding yoga. Okay, and it is definitely one of the steps of going forward, but that is not the end, right? So that is where we have to have a look at the wider understanding of yoga, which is a kind of harmony between binaries that we come across, harmony between thought and emotion, harmony between body and mind, harmony between various aspects that we see to be opposites, and harmony among many of the aspects which are supposed to be complementary. And that is where we come across at least four different explanations of yoga in our tradition. One of them being Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Patanjali, Maharshi Patanjali has given us a Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where yoga is understood to be, or explained to be, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Okay, Yoga is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, where it is understood that yoga is controlling the mental modifications. It is what is required in yoga is controlling the mind. How do you do that? How do you control the functions of the mind, thoughts, emotions, and feelings that it promotes, mind promotes? How do you control that is one of the primary aspects that Patanjali Yoga Sutra tries to address and help us with. And the second kind of definition that we find is in Bhagavad Gita, where yoga is understood to be karmasu kausalam. Yoga karmasu kausalam, which means actions. How perfectly you become skilled in an action. Okay, skillful action is understood to be yoga in Bhagavad Gita. See, even in these two aspects, what is pointed out is harmony. When do you become very skillful? When you become skillful in action, what happens basically is you become one with the action. The agent and the action become one. No, once you become very skillful, highly skillful, you don't think that you are an agent and action is different. Both of them combine together into one unity. That unity is not unity of two different things. It is a harmonious unity where the two will not exist separately. So that's what is being stressed when it is said yoga karmas kausalam. The third definition that we get is in Yoga Vasista, where it is said yoga mana prashmana upayaha. Okay, yoga is the cure of the mind to become perfectly steady and peaceful. This is the kind of definition which Yoga Vasista provides us. This is from Ramayana. So one we have from Yoga Sutra, one we have from Bhagavad Gita, one we have from Ramayana as well, defining and explaining yoga to us. Excuse me. But along with these 3 pointers, most important definition that we come across, which is also a part of which is stated in Bhagavad Gita, is yoga samatvam yoga mutyate. No, equanimity is understood to be yoga. This is where Professor Sampadananda Mishra is rooting his talk and trying to explain us how equanimity, what kind of equanimity that we are looking at, okay, and what kind of balanced state that we should try to obtain. Okay, this is where Professor Sampadananda Mishra's talk would be very useful to us. And with these few words, I request Dr. Geetesh to take us further by introducing Professor Sampadananda Mishra. Over to you, Dr. Geetesh.
Thank you, Professor Bala. We have amongst us today Dr. Sampadananda Mishra, who is a director at Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture, which is situated at Sri Aurobindo Society, Puducherry. He's passionate about Sanskrit while strongly believing that Sanskrit has immense potentiality to elevate the human consciousness to sublime heights. Dr. Mishra has spoken at various conferences, seminars, and literary and religious festivals, both nationally and internationally, on topics ranging from Sanskrit, Indian culture, yoga, and education. In addition, Dr. Mishra, as a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, he's familiar with their writings and he feels comfortable in delivering lectures on philosophy and practice of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. He has been to USA several times for giving lectures, conducting workshops, and participating in conferences and seminars. He's one of the keynote speakers that he was in the WAVES conference that took place in Trinidad and Tobago in the year 2010. In the year 2014, Dr. Mishra was invited to the Monash University, Melbourne, for giving a talk on character development and service to the humanity in a seminar on Swami Vivekananda. He's also closely associated with the members of School of Philosophy there, and he constantly guides their Sanskrit teachers. Dr. Mishra worked as the associate editor of the collected works of Vaishishta Kavyakanda Ganapati Muni, which has been published in 12 volumes. Dr. Mishra has launched the first ever 24-hour Sanskrit radio called Divyavani and is single-handedly managing the entire content of this radio since its inception in 2013. In the year 2014, Dr. Mishra founded Sanskrita Bala Sahitya Parishada with the aim of creating, evaluating, and propagating children's literature in Sanskrit. The Government of India conferred the President's Award in 2011 on Dr. Mishra for his outstanding contribution to Sanskrit. In the year 2014, the Ministry of Culture, the Government of India, conferred the Senior Fellowship Award to Dr. Mishra for carrying out his research on the Vedic art of multiple concentration. Dr. Mishra has also been conferred the Kendriya Sahitya Academy Bala Puraskar Award 2018 for his book Shanai Shanai, a beautiful book of rhyming songs for children in Sanskrit. Dr. Mishra's achievements in his working life are also very impressive. Some of the books written by him are The Wonder That is Sanskrit and the Evolution of Human Speech, Sri Aurobindo and Sanskrit, Hasya Manjari, which is a book of humorous stories in Sanskrit, Chandu Vallari, a beautiful handbook of Sanskrit prosody. These books are fine examples that showcase the greatness of Sanskrit. In addition to his effort to revive Sanskrit, he has also produced audio CDs and multimedia CD-ROMs such as Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the Light of Sri Aurobindo, which is a multimedia CD-ROM containing 3,500 pages of research matter on the Gita. Deva Bhasha, the language of gods, in a multimedia CD-ROM. Ashta Vadanam, or Eightfold Concentration, which is also a multimedia CD-ROM. Sri Aurobindo Upanishad, an audio CD containing the recitation of Sri Aurobindo Upanishad, and Shyama Smaranam, an audio CD containing hymns to Krishna. We are really honored to have amongst us a distinguished scholar, a man with a lot of simplicity, but immense greatness in him. Today, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra, while commemorating the 6th International Yoga Day, would be speaking to us on Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. It's a deliberation on yogic equality as expounded in the Bhagavad Gita. So we are very honored to have you. And now I hand it over to you to deliver the address for the 45 minutes. Thank you.
Namaskar to all of you. And at the outset, I express my deep sense of gratitude to the whole team which has thought of this series of lectures and also inviting me for this occasion just before the International Day of Yoga. And it's a very wonderful time that we all are experiencing, being at home and staying at home, being at home. We are participating in various Shastra Charcha, deliberations on different Shastras, learning. So everything is happening virtually. So this virtual world is not something new, but India has been speaking, and also like we find a lot of when we go deep into the Shastric tradition, we see how virtual world was given more importance than the real world. So that is being materialized by the situation, or the science and technology is taking care of that. So I'm immensely happy to be a part of this yajna. So because Swadhyaya yajna, Vag yajna, these are all yajna. And when we look at it from this angle, then the learning is more intense and learning is more effective. So in this yajna, we have the today's topic that I have chosen is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Now there have been definitions and definitions and definitions of yoga, and each definition is interpreted differently by different commentators, different scholars, so everyone looks at it from a very different angle. Now Samatvam Yoga Uchyate has been a most prominent definition of yoga in the tradition, and especially when we are talking about the Gita's way of yoga. Now in Gita's way of yoga, though we have yoga karmasu kaushalam, Gita is also preaching about the samarpana yoga, the yoga of self-giving, the yoga of self-consecration, the yoga of complete surrender, purna samarpana. But it explains very scientifically, very systematically how this yoga can be practiced in our day-to-day life. So then the yoga, in a sense, which is a very systematic method of accelerating the progressive evolution of humanity, the progressive evolution of the human consciousness. So it is directly dealing with the human consciousness, because ultimate aim of yoga, education, life is to attain to that unity of consciousness, which is the source of everything. If we look at the whole process of involution and evolution, so everything comes from that one unity of consciousness, which has extended itself to become the multiplicity. And in this process of that one becoming many, the subtlemost becoming the grossmost, so that essential unity, though it is essentially lying in everything and being and happening, but yet it is covered, it is veiled. So it seems at least as if that unity, that oneness is lost. Now, by evolution of consciousness means to regain that unity of consciousness. So, from the grossmost, again, our travel, our journey is towards that unity of consciousness. That can happen, and for that, there have been so many ways, so many processes, so many methods which have been given in our Indian tradition. Like, how do we move on this path of evolutionary journey in order to attain to that unity of consciousness, that oneness? So that is why whenever we go to the Vedas, to the Upanishads, to the Gita, to any Shastra which is speaking about the evolution of consciousness, we find that these are the two most important keywords in the yogic tradition, in the Adhyatma Parampara, in the Adhyatmic tradition: Samatva and Ekatva, the sameness and the oneness, the equality or equanimity and the oneness. These two have to be achieved. Where it has to be achieved? Because it is not something, our consciousness is not just one thing in which we can achieve. It also has different faculties, different facets. So like the body has its own consciousness, our vital, our sensational, emotional being has its own consciousness, mind has its own consciousness, and each part of our being also has further layers. So it is not, consciousness is not something like one piece where we can say that, okay, this is what is consciousness, and then you deal with this, everything will be perfect. No, it is very, very complex, extremely complex. Why we need to develop so many methods, so many processes where one has to go through, is to understand oneself completely. This Atma Jnana has been the foundation of our tradition. And because of this, because in India, this science has been worked out in such detail that this Atma Jnana is the very basis of our Adhyatmic tradition. Whatever we do in life, in education, in yoga, Atmanam Vidhi, know thyself completely, not partially. And this is the most difficult task of knowing oneself, because we are not one piece, one one single mold thing where we can, like, we know this and then we know ourselves. Yes, that is there, that one thing ultimately we have to discover. Yasmin vijnate sarvamidam vijnatam bhavati. So knowing which everything else will be known, so that itself is Atman. That Atman has to be known, not in isolation, in relation with the supreme reality, of which it is a spark, of which it is a small portion or an individualized portion of that. So in that individualized spark, what has happened is there are thick layers, layers after layers, which doesn't allow our external self. So the Gita's yoga The one of the there can be Mahavakyas, like in Upanishads you have Mahavakya. In Vedas also one can bring out so many Mahavakyas, and the Gita's Mahavakya, one of the Mahavakyas, though Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam is one of the Mahavakyas of the Gita. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate is one of the Mahavakyas of the Gita. Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja is another Mahavakya of the Gita. Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru, another most important Mahavakyas of the Bhagavad Gita. And Uddhare Datmanatmanam Na Atmanam Avasadayet. This is another Mahavakya of the Bhagavad Gita, where it speaks of this, how we are divided, how we are distanced from our inmost being because of our thick layers, because of this veil. That we have an outer self, the desire self, which is our projected self, and we consider it as the self. So when we communicate with others, when we communicate with the world, what is it that is communicating? Is it my inmost being communicating with another inmost being, or is it just my projection communicating with another projection? So if we see closely, we will find out that how much we live in these externalities, how much we live in this projected consciousness of ours, the external consciousness, the Bahirmukhi Jagat. So my projection interacting with your projection. So, and because the Bahirmukhi Jagat needs more words for communication, it's very complicated. It cannot be understood properly. If we are living within, in our inmost being, if we are conscious, we don't need to speak much. The message can be communicated silently. The message can be communicated, the interaction can happen more harmoniously, more systematically, more solidly, and using less expenditure, using less number of words and with less expenditure of energy. So this is where the yoga helps us how to interact with the outside world with less expenditure of energy and most effectively. So Samatvam Yoga Vichyate, because this is the focus. So I will come back to this aspect of Samatva and Ekatva with a little more explanation of the word from the Vedic, Vedantic, and especially in the light of the Gita. Looking at certain practical aspects, how do we practically implement that idea of samatva and ekatva in our life, so then we live the tradition, where we represent that living tradition by living all that has been given in our tradition, not just knowing intellectually, not just having some kind of mental understanding of the idea. So this Uddhared Atmanatmanam, it says that this outer projected self has to be delivered by the self. So it speaks of these two selves. So as long as we live in this outer consciousness, this projected self, we are divided. We are, like again, this duality, these binaries. So these binaries and dualities are the root cause of all our crisis. So that is why, what is the advice, what is the teaching of all the Shastras? You go to the Vedas, you go to Upanishads, you go to Yoga Vasishtha, you go to any philosophical text, any other Shastra, transcend the binaries. Transcending the dualities, transcending the binaries, we can have a lasting solution to all our problems at the individual level, at the collective level. So how does this transcendence can happen? This cannot happen. There is no, like one way, that one method that I say that 1 + 1 is 2. That way it doesn't happen. This yogic path is the path of spirituality is so wide, so varied, that one has to find out. It also says it doesn't impose one way. That is the beauty of our tradition, that there is no one shot where everyone has to fit in. So everyone has to find out for himself or herself what is the best way conducive to oneself for making this journey effective and attaining to this, being established or being formed in that unity of consciousness, that oneness, and that samatva. So transcending binaries. So that is why this is the reason that we need to look at that how we move on this path of ekatva and samatva. Now we know that this whole world, the world in which we live, it is so full of chaos. It is so full of disturbances. This is where this greatest teaching of the Gita, just one word is enough. This word samatvam is a lifetime sadhana. There lies the whole foundation of the yoga sadhana, the yoga abhyasa, the adhyatma jivana, the root cause of the spiritual root, the key of the adhyatma jivana or the spiritual life. So equality, in a very simple language, it means not to be disturbed by any disturbance, not to be disturbed by any disturbance, whether that disturbance is within or the disturbance is outside, within oneself or without oneself, whether we are dealing with ourselves or we are dealing with the outside world, not to be disturbed by any disturbance, and to receive everything that comes in life, to receive it with calm, undisturbed, equal mind, all the changing impacts of life, anything that comes in life, to look at it from that state of undisturbed, unflinching, undeviating, unwavering calmness and tranquility. So this, in a simple language, is the meaning of equality. But this equality has to be established not at one part of our being, but in all the different parts of our being. So when we say all the different parts of our being, so this is where understanding is necessary, that what are the different parts of our being that we need to understand, so then we can bring that harmony in each part of our being. In a practical sense, if we observe ourselves, we will see that we have a body, which is our physical consciousness, and this body again is sustained and maintained by the prana, the vital energy. So in the vital also, like, which is our emotional, sensational, our pranic, dynamic aspect of our being, has its different parts. It has a lower vital, it has a higher vital. Our lower vital or brings, like, it deals with all kinds of desire, passion, the hunger, the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, all the shadripus. So as long as we are trapped in the narrowness of our consciousness, so these lower vital forces are more active in us, and their very nature is divisive. They divide. They will never allow to be, remain united, or unity can never be achieved as long as man is bound by these limited uh, forces. So that is why when someone lives, that is why the tantric system of the yoga calls that the one who lives in this narrowness of consciousness, lives in that lower consciousness, is pashu. Is pashu means bound, is not just animal. Animal can be one of the meanings of pashu, but pashu is that which is limited. Pash means to bind, to fix. So has a lot of rigidity, obstinacy, fixity, cannot come out of, like anything. So understands or think in a very fixed way. So that is why the people who have established equality or equanimity in them have a very flexible consciousness, flexible. And if they have established it at each level, each part of their being, so they have a very flexible body, supple body, beautiful harmonious movement in the physical consciousness. If they have established that when the vital has that equanimity, that equality, and therefore, the equality has to be established in the physical consciousness, in the vital consciousness, in the mental consciousness, and again, mind also has different layers. I'll come to that. But this vital equality, achieving equality or establishing equality at the vital level, also to bring that kind of tranquility, that kind of calmness, that kind of poise into the more active, dynamic vital, because vital is our emotional and sensational being, that from which, and also the higher vital from which all our dynamism comes. So that has to be regulated, that has to be, put into certain measured movement. So that energy has to flow in a measured way, in a rhythmic way, in a quite poised manner, not in a chaotic manner. So the equanimity has to be established at the physical level, and when it is there, so the body has the suppleness, the body has realizes its own, I mean, it is aware of its own consciousness, and then it knows, and that's how the well-being of the physical can be maintained through samatva, by bringing that harmony, by bringing that rhythmic aspect into the movement. So that's why the divine, that divine manifests in the form of beauty in the physical. So divine means that perfection. So that perfection comes, manifests in the form of beauty, in the form of rhythm. So that is why anyone who has established that equality in his consciousness, when he sits, when he walks, when he does any kind of physical movement, we can almost see that how rhythmically, how beautifully, how quietly, how in a very measured, regulated manner one behaves. So the yogis who live in this ekatva and samatva, so their physical movements are very, very less, and they know exactly, if they have to sit, they know exactly what movements are needed to sit at one place or to do any kind of physical action. So no unnecessary movements are done by the yogis who have established equality in their physical. The same way, so yogi who has established the equality in the vital level, they do not get disturbed by any kind of sensation or emotion, or any kind of movement in the vital being. Similarly, like we have to establish that equality in the mind also. So mind has different layers, like we have a physical mind, we have a vital mind, which is the physical mind is directly connected with the physical and has all the nature of the physical. It has that tamas of inertia of the physical. It has that habitual robotic, gatanugatik, that yantravat. So it attends to things in life in a very mechanical, robotic way, without putting any sense to it. So what is beyond sense, a sense, it doesn't attend to that. It gets disturbed by that. So that is the physical mind, the most like it is most outward mind, which is more mechanical and habitual in its nature. Similarly, we have the vital mind, which attends to the vital, the impulses, the instincts, which come, justifies that, and then has the nature of all the vital in it. So similarly, we have the proper mind which thinks. So there is a thinking mind, there is a reasoning mind. Then beyond that, you have the illumined mind, you have the intuitive mind, you have the higher mind, you have the overmind. Then, as Sri Aurobindo says, that beyond the overmind, there is the supermind, which was realized by him. So, in order to understand ourselves or establish equality in our consciousness, we need to go deep within ourselves to find out what are the different parts of the being, what are the different movements of each, what the functioning and the movements of each being. So, unless and until we are aware of ourselves, we cannot know what is coming from where, and then we mix up. So, sometimes what comes from the vital or the physical, without knowing, we consider it as my mental or what comes from mind, we consider it as the vital or physical. There's a very chaotic understanding of ourselves. So equality all parts of our being, in the physical, in the sensational, emotional part. So equality means, in this sense, is not to be excited or attached to the pleasant or joyous experiences, nor it means that a recoil from unpleasant and what is painful. So, but to receive and endure both with an equal mind, with equal heart. And so, and then learn to see what are the lessons or the opportunities which life is trying to present us through these experiences. This is the beauty. Like, instead of recoiling, instead of rejecting life, oh, this is unpleasant, this is painful, I must stay away from this, or this is very pleasant, this is very joyous, and this is very, like, this gives me joy, so I should cling to it. So instead of doing that, can we develop a kind of witnessing aspect within us, that it doesn't get engaged with all that comes, like pleasant and joyous, or unpleasant and painful, what are called as the dvandvas, the dualities, because it will come and go. So at one place, therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna that, all these things, matra sparshastu kaunteya. So these touches, this contact with all kinds of dualities that exist in the world, in this relative world. So the heat and cold, the pain and pleasure, all these different dvandvas, they will keep appearing, they will come and go. Nothing is permanent. Agama, apayana, anitya. So they will come and go. They are anitya. They are not eternal, not long lasting. So what is to be done? Say tan titikshasva bharata. So have titiksha, have endured them. And we will talk about a little later, like when I deal with the different types of samatha. So their titiksha is just one type of samatha. So what are the different types, that I will come later to explain you. And then how do we put into, become aware of whether I'm doing this type of samatha or that type of samatha, whether I'm passive or active, or dynamic, so that we will understand after this, insight that we draw from the teachings of the Gita. So now, instead of being excited or being very much hurt by or disappointed by the situations, to maintain this state of equanimity, which is the most difficult part. See, it's easy to read a book and understand something mentally. It is easy to speak about it in front of an audience, about all the higher values that, the Shastras speak. It is very easy to write articles, books, and then do it. But the most difficult thing is to put into practice a little bit of it, little bit of it. So one drop of practice, therefore, the mother says, is better than oceans of theories. So what is the take home, that when we come to understand something like this, is that what aspect of this I can put into practice in my life, in order to gain more strength, in order to empower myself, or in order to become aware of the perfection, the strength, the potentiality that lies hidden within me. So then I am empowered, I can make utilization of the full potentiality of myself. So if that is not done, then the Shastras, the all our knowledge, everything, the repository of all our knowledge, experiences, realizations, all that has been given to us, it just doesn't make much sense to our life. So uh, one thing that we learned, that this equality has to be established not just in one part, but it has to be established in all parts of our being, at the physical, at the vital, at the mental level. Then we can see that equality in the yogic path when we analyze more ourselves and analyze again in the light of what is given in uh, um, in the Gita itself. Gita doesn't speak just samatvam yoga uchyate. Now, if you take this whole idea of trigunatitatva, gunatita, so transcending all the gunas. If you take this whole concept of sthita prajnata, if you take, like how does a bhakta, which bhakta is more dear to, where when you come to chapter 12, in almost all chapters of the Gita, you will find something which is directly connected with this samatva and ekatva. So that is why this is the one of the greatest mahavakyas, that samatvam yoga uchyate. And so throughout its teaching, whether it is speaking about the jnana yoga, whether it is speaking about the bhakti yoga, whether it is speaking about the karma yoga or the samarpana yoga, or a synthesis of all these three. So you can see the importance of equality, the samatva and the ekatva, in the teaching, in the yoga of the Gita. So that is why in the Gita itself is a great synthesis of yoga. So how he has synthesized, reconciled the various, ideas, concepts with regard to yoga in its single, making it a very consistent uh, throughout, from the beginning to end. The system of yoga that we find in the Gita is very, 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 very consistent. So now this equality, when we analyze, we will find that this yogic, in the yogic path, the equality is not something like as understood usually, a very scientific or systematic neutrality. So sometimes it is confused with neutrality, some kind of passivity, some kind of indifference. No, that is not equality. So one can remain neutral, one can remain passive, one can remain indifferent to things, to oneself or to things outside, to happenings outside, but that will not be called as equality, because equality is not neutrality, or equality is not some kind of value neural attitude of a kind of free thinker or scientific mind. So it's not that. In yoga, equality is part of the discipline, or discipline for accelerating the moral, psychological, and spiritual progress of the individual. So this is what is the beauty of the teaching of the Gita. When we study it systematically and study this in relation to the samatva and ekatva aspect, it cannot be understood in isolation. You link it with all the ideas which are presented in the yoga, the sthita prajnata, the trigunatitatva, and the greatest bhakta, the greatest samarpana, the greatest jnani, the whole idea of karma yoga. And this is where the practical applicability of the Gita's teaching lies. So then we can experience it in our life, in our day-to-day life, in all that we do in the world. So it is not a kind of neutrality, it is not a kind of free thinker, the value neural attitude of a free thinker or scientific mind, but as I said, the yogic equality, it's a discipline for accelerating the moral, psychological, and spiritual progress of the individual. So it is, in one sense, an end by itself, and it is also a powerful means for the realization of certain moral, spiritual results. So first, the equality, or this results that comes from this discipline of equality, they have it achieves first or reconciling wisdom. So the first symptom, the sign and symptom of this establishment of equality within oneself, when we are practicing and following this discipline, we will find that we achieve a kind of reconciling wisdom, which unites the opposites in a higher insight than that of dualistic, rational, ethical, or aesthetic mind. So, and then it opens a passage to the unity of consciousness, unity of consciousness of the spirit, an eternal and global truth, the beauty, the goodness, beyond the relative and changing conceptions of this, what we call this Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, the truth, beauty, and goodness. So it leads us through that towards that unity of consciousness. So this is the equality in the context of yoga, and this practically how to develop this discipline of equality in our day-to-day life. So there are various stages which we can draw from the teaching of the Gita. So now if we look at the first step towards the this discipline, practicing of this discipline of equality, is to develop this sense of endurance. So this is what is in the language of the Gita is titiksha. So this endurance of the dual impacts, not with a passive subjection, though endurance is a kind of passive, titiksha is a kind of passive equality. So the passive samatha, the nishkriya samatha, but we are not advised to remain passive. So that can happen. One can remain indifferent forever. One can remain passive or neutral forever towards situation, towards people, towards happening. But what is advised, what is expected of everyone is to remain active and dynamic. What do we do this with this equality, with this state of equanimity? How do we interact with the world with that, from that state of equality? So one has to achieve that, and after achieving, one has to deal with the world, with oneself, with the world from that state of equanimity. So that is what is the advice, that is what is the teaching of the Gita. So the first thing is to develop this sense of endurance. So that is why Krishna says to Arjuna that agama apayana anitya tan titikshasva bharata. This cold and heat, pain and pleasure, all these different things, opposites will keep coming and going. Knowing the anitya nature of that, knowing the non-lasting nature of that, titikshasva, just endure. But while enduring, do not remain passive. Also, you face it dynamically. So that is how, like the beauty of Gita's teaching is that even while in the battlefield, so you have to endure so many things. The enemy's anger, the enemy's insult, everything will be coming to you, and the joy that you also get by killing the enemies, or retaliating the enemies in a more effective way, so that joy also will keep exciting you. But you have to remain undisturbed in both the situations, whether you are being insulted by the enemy, or you are getting more joyous knowing that you are going to be victorious or killing your enemy. So in both states you have to remain undisturbed, and endurance is the first stage towards establishment of that equanimity. Then the second stage of equanimity, establishing or following this discipline, is a kind of indifference towards things. So this indifference is not in a very crude sense indifference that I am indifferent or I am detached. I have nothing to do with this. Not that kind of indifference. So that part has been explained in the Gita using the word udasina. Now mark this word udasa or udasina in our regional languages has a very negative meaning. Like we say, oh, he's so udas, he's so indifferent, so detached. So this udasina in its root sense means to stand or sit high. Ut asina, to place oneself higher than that. Say for example, if one is a part of the chaos, part of a mob, he will not know what is happening. He will not have a clear idea about what is happening. The one who is standing above, or if we take an aerial view of the situation, we know what is happening. We have a clearer idea about what is happening on the ground. So most of the times in our day-to-day life, why we keep facing problem is that we participate in the chaos. We are not, remaining little away or above from that. So udasinata means like titiksha in its root sense means tease, like from which the word tejas comes, to sharpen oneself from within, to remain strong and unaffected in whatever the situation may be. So udasinata is a kind of witnessing spirit that standing above or sitting above, ut asina, just looking at it from a higher point of view. Like as we have an aerial view of something which is happening on the ground. So what is happening within myself? What is happening outside? How am I reacting to the situations, or I am reacting or responding to the situations from what state of consciousness? So these are the things which has to happen from a higher consciousness. So moving above than the average or the normal consciousness in which we have. So that is the second stage of the practice of uh, what is called the equality or samatha. The third stage of uh, practicing this discipline of samatha is to have a sense or develop this sense, that sense of acceptance of everything, like all that comes, whether this thing happens to me, doesn't happen to me, good is happening to me or bad is happening to me, or whatever is happening to me. So I accept it with an equal state of mind, equal state of my emotion, or even at the physical level in all parts of my being. So in that, from that state of equanimity, this acceptance again, in what sense? With a sense of that everything happens because he wishes. Because so this is where one slowly connects one's own individual will with the divine will, and trying to understand what the divine will could be. So but that again, there is a danger also, and this part is known as like what we see in the Gita, like mayeva mana adhatsva. Okay, my buddhim niveshaya, like fixing, giving everything to me. So giving everything to me, thinking about me, surrendering me, you just continue doing your work. So because everything happens, it is because of my will. So because of the divine will. So everything is, so we should not take it in a sense that everything is predetermined, everything in this world happens only because of his wish. So there is a danger that it can lead to a state where one doesn't do anything, remains inactive and passive, that and indifferent to everything. That because what change I can bring to myself when I am programmed and designed by the divine in a particular way? So why should make I make any effort to bring any change or interfere in divine's work? So there, that kind of tamas one can fall into if one develop this sense of nati. So nati is that we accept it as a divine will, but at the same time we grow more and more conscious of what the divine will wants to do through this situation by bringing that situation into my life. In order to find out that, so one has to increase one's own awareness and then put more force and more effort to find out what that divine will is, in order to you know find out this, that what the divine wills for me, what it wants me to do through this situation, what it wants me to learn from this situation. So when we come, then we can see that this entire equality or samatha can be looked as the two different samatha. One is a nishkriya samatha, a passive samatha. One is a sakriya samatha, or the active samatha. So the passive samatha is the titiksha, the udasinata, and nati. So titiksha is just endurance, and again that this endurance also should not be like it comes and goes, but how do I increase my own strength to take even more attacks on me, more things on me, and then I am not disturbed. So something which we have just passively endured, and that is not the real victory, but something greater than that may come. So that is why if we just remain it as a titiksha, as a passive level, passive titiksha, then we will fail when something greater than that comes, what has happened to us. So that is why titiksha means we keep ourselves sharpening and dynamically be ready to face the challenges of life, so whatever happens. So this titiksha, udasinata, nati, though they are considered to be the passive, they are necessary for our for the establishment of samatva. And at the same time, this samatha should never remain as passive. So what is the dynamic element that we bring in order to interact with the world or live in this world, and then working from that state of equanimity, that state of samatva? So that gives a greater connection with that unity of consciousness, and that with that oneness. So then we learn the art and science of living rightly, because this right living, so living rightly and living perfectly, so that is what is the main aim of our life, main aim of education, main aim of yoga. So some of the verses which are prominent in this connection with regard to the samatha is something like this, that we have this famous verse, dukkheshu anudvigna manaha sukheshu vigata spruha. So in dukkha anudvigna mana, we do not get agitated by the dukkha, any painful situation. Sukheshu vigata spruha, and we do not get excited by what is called the sukha. So that is the state of equanimity. So therefore, in order to understand this whole idea of equanimity and how to practice it, so read the entire Gita and look closely this whole two concepts of sthita prajnata and the trigunati tattva, and then see how the Gita synthesizes these three different yogas, the jnana yoga, this trinity, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, and karma yoga, and then how it wants us to live in this world doing work for the divine, because the whole purpose of life is to live for the divine, work for the divine. So then every karma of ours becomes the divya karma, then we are the true karma yogis. So the famous verse samatvam yoga vichyate is just a part, the fourth line of this famous verse from chapter 248, where it says yoga sthah kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Yogastha kuru karmani, do all karma. In Gita's teaching, there is no this karma or that karma, there is no good, there is no small karma or big karma. Kritsnam karma, it says samagram karma, all kinds of work. One can even sweep the floor or clean the toilet or do the worship in temple and sit in meditation or do all kinds of work or rule the nation. So all are equal from the yogic perspective. So yogastha kuru karmani, so when this karma is performed from that state of yoga, from that state of by being united with the highest level of consciousness, that the higher that we have so far realized. So now the question is, another beauty of this yoga tradition, it says that when we are in a state of equality, when we are in a higher state, we should not consider that that is the highest, because there is no end to perfection. So from that state, we also should aspire to go higher and higher and higher and higher, because there is no end to perfection. So achieving perfection means just reaching a peak where from another peak is visible. So that is why the Vedas say Sanuhu Sanum, peaks after peaks after peaks we need to achieve. So that is what is it means by realizing the perfection within. So there is no highest perfection. So there is no end to perfection. So in whatever higher state of consciousness we are, and from there again, and that will help again and show us the path how to achieve the next level. So atmopamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadiva dukkham sa yogi paramo mata. Atmopamyena, as you know, like the famous verse of Ishopanishad, sarva bhuteshu tatmanam, like yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati. So this the verse number 6 and 7 of Ishopanishad in this connection also, you know, is important, like how much importance was given in the yogic tradition on this idea of samatva and ekatva. So to remain established, founded in that state of equality, in that state of oneness, is the supreme achievement for a yogi, or that is the most important thing in leading a yogic life, where we find a solution, lasting solution to all the different problems and the crises that we face in our life, individually or collectively. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashatsva avinashyantam yah pashyati sapashyati. We need to develop that vision, that inner eye, to see what is what. Yam hina vyathayantyete purusham purusharshava sama sukha dukham dhiram. So amritatvaya kalpate. So how do we attain to that amrita, that soma, that surya sabita, that ananda? Amritatvaya kalpate sama sukha dukham dhiram. Sama sukha dukha swastha sama loshtasma kanchana tulya priya priyo dhiras tulya nindatma sanstuti. Now we are satisfied or happy with someone praises us, very unhappy if someone insults us. That keeps happening in our day-to-day life. So here we need to look at ourselves. So what do I gain by being happy with someone's praise, or what do I gain by being hurt by someone's insult? Can I remain equal to both? With Krishna had said to Uddhava once that, look, Uddhava, so in my eyes, the Kansa and Radha and Uddhava and Krishna all are same. Suhrun Mitra Ari Udasina Madhyastha Dvishya Bandhushu Sadhushva Picha Papeshu Samabuddhir Vishishyate. Samam Pashyan hi Sarvatra Samat Samavasthitam Ishwaram Na Hinasti Atmanatmanam Tato Yati Paramgatim. And as long as we remain in the divided consciousness, Atmanam Hinasti, like we kill ourselves. It is not physically killing ourselves, but being in that divided consciousness or living a life of duality in binaries is also atmaghatita. They're not hinasti. So that is why it says, like samavasthitam ishwaram pashyan hi sarvatra, that samam brahma, realizing that samam brahma, which is equal. So the sama word is equated with the Brahman itself, samam brahma. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavasthitamishwaram na hinastyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Samah shatraucha mitrecha tatha manapamanayoh shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samah sanga vivarjita. And the beauty of the Gita is that all these different verses which speak about samatva, if someone just repeats it as mantra, does the japa of that, one develops again the sense of this mantra, the force of these verses, because these are not mere words of a poet, mere words of an intellectual person. These are the words directly coming from Sri Krishna Bhagavan himself, who says that while speaking to you, Arjuna, of these words, I was united with the highest level of my consciousness. So he has brought down these words from that highest state of consciousness. Param hi Brahma Kathitam Yoga Yuktena Tanmaya. So I have spoken to you these supreme words from the highest level of consciousness. So that is why Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Na Sochati Na Kankshati Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So that establishing that samabhava, so is, and then being equal to sarvabhuta. So that is why yogi, a rishi, a sadhu, a santa is known as sarvabhuta hite rata. So he is always rata, engrossed in doing good to all. So good to all means in that all also, in that sarvabhuta, he himself is also included. So that is what is the whole idea of karma, the samatha, based is founded in which we do all our karma. And another important verse with which I will end this deliberation on samatva and then invite questions or deal with your questions. So there's another famous verse in the Gita which says, Karmani akarma yah pasye, akarmani cha karma yah, sabuddhiman manusyeshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. On the first verse where it says samatvam yoga vidyate, it says yogastha kuru karmani. So what does it mean, yogastha, or being yukta, being in yoga, or being united? So this is what it again explains, that this is what is meant by yukta or yogastha. Karmani akarma yah pasyet akarmani cha karma yah. The one who sees action in inaction and inaction in action. It's a very tricky verse, and when we translate karma as the active dynamism of prakriti and akarma as that passive tranquility of the purusha, so seeing that the purusha in prakriti and prakriti in purusha, it means like while being engaged in the dynamism of the action, one should never remain, away from that poise of the purusha, that tranquil nature of the purusha, that unflinching calmness of the purusha. And while being in that state of calmness, nirava nischalata, then also one should not remain passive, but work out everything in this world from that state of consciousness. So when these two are reconciled, karmani akarma and akarmani karma, then one has the perfect equality to perform all kinds of action without committing any mistake, or and all kinds of action through which one can grow, achieving perfection after perfection, reaching peaks after peaks. Sabuddhiman manusyeshu yukta kritsna karma krit. So these are few ideas which I thought I would share with you all, so then there is some clarity about what is the yogic perspective towards or yogic perspective of samatva in the context of the Gita's yoga, samatvam yoga uchyate. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. Its knowledge is like a ocean. No, we can only at any given point of time have a limited of that. We cannot have everything together at one instant point of time. Professor Mishra has given a very informative talk to us, and an informative talk along with a vibrant discussion is the one which gives us a very sumptuous feeling, right? We are closing this session with this kind of sumptuous feeling, which is given to us by Professor Sadananda Mishra ji,
Sampadananda.
Sampadananda Mishra ji. Yeah, his sampat is Ananda, right? So he shared that Ananda, the sampat of Ananda that he has with all of us, along with Vijnana as well. attaching Vijnana to that. Now I request Dr. Geetesh to proceed with vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Bala. Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Before I go ahead with a vote of thanks, I would like to request all of you to switch off. Without taking much of time, I just want to convey that Dr. Mishra's lectures, as always, are very enlightening, beautifully worded, and they galvanize a lot of hope in whoever listens to them. He always has a knack of simplifying very difficult philosophical concepts, and today also he did the same, talking about stages of equanimity through the explanation on endurance, indifference, acceptance. Now, these three things, if we are able to practice during this period of pandemic, I think we will get answers to all the questions that keep ringing in our mind, and especially in a situation where psychological issues are really bothering the minds of many. Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for being with us, sparing time for us, and explaining to us a day before the International Yoga Day to understand the value of yogic consciousness, the concepts that are inherent in it as samatva and ekatva. And to sum it all, one can just go back to Mother's words as he started with, that a drop of practice is always better than ocean of theories. Dr. Mishra, thank you for bringing Mother in. Thank you for bringing in insights from Sri Aurobindo, explanation on Gita. And thank you for being there. I thank on behalf of whole Spark team, Dr. Bala, all our participants who have always enthusiastically been with us right from the beginning of these series that was almost 2 weeks back. And we request you to keep joining us, keep promoting our social media handles, as well as write to us at the feedback forms as to who are the speakers or distinguished scholars that you would like us to invite. We would definitely try our best. And if there is anything else also, please feel free to write to us, because we have a very strong team working towards the dissemination of knowledge and wisdom inherited in our ancient epic Mahabharata, within which is subsumed the beautiful text Bhagavad Gita. So I thank you all. Thank you. Please take care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay healthy. Namaskara and dhanyavad.
Thank you. Thank you so much.